My name is Phillip McCann and I was principal cornet from 1973 to 1989. Well, I think it really came about, at the time I was playing principal cornet with the Fairy Band, and it was about April, May, and it was the emergence, I believe, of the famous James Shepherd versatile brass. And there was quite a number of players obviously in Black Dyke at that time. And I don't know what the politics were, but it ended up with those same players leaving Black Dyke Band to form James Shepherd versatile brass. And that's when I was approached to come up. So I started with my little town band, which is the happiest banding of my life. People look at me sometimes in amazement when I say that, but as regards the happiest banding, it truly was. And I was 7 years old, 8 years old, and all I can remember is standing on the pavement in the town of Bo'ness, and the band was walking past, marching past, and I was just standing with my grandfather, and it sticks with me so vividly. And just pulling, oh, I want to play, I want to play. And we went along to Kinneil Band Room on the Sunday morning and joined the junior band and went every Sunday morning and paid £1 a week or whatever it was to play in the junior band. In fact, the first instrument I was given, it's, well, you know as well as me, that the situation with most local bands, they give you an instrument, and I was actually given a soprano cornet to begin with, but not very long. I was on the B flat cornet, but nobody taught me as such individually. When I started, it was, as I say, the junior band, and I think it was the bass trombone player from the senior band who would teach us every Sunday morning. The usual recipe was some simple marches, but more importantly probably some nice hymn tunes. I don't want to sound arrogant because it's certainly not intended that way, but I think I'm a strong believer, I think, in life with most things. We can teach people. I try to do that today and have done for a number of years, and you can help them be better and you try your best to guide them. But I think there are certain things that each of us are given from wherever you want to believe. So I've not really had that guidance in so far as the technique of the breath control and the expressiveness, etc., and the quality of tone. I think that's mostly given from somewhere. Obviously people have helped. When I was about 13, 14, my parents used to take me through to Glasgow on a Saturday morning to the academy, and the first professional tuition I received was from a man called Enoch Jackson, famous trumpet player of the day, and that was every Saturday morning. That probably started the actual technical aspect of things, but no, I just wanted to play every minute I could from between school and the next day. It was just literally playing and wanting to play melodies and solos, perhaps too much, I don't know. Black Dyke, even to me, I don't know whether it was because I was Scottish and coming from the Scottish background, it didn't really ring massive bells. You know, I mean, it's like looking at Manchester United, I guess, in banding, but to me it didn't. Obviously I knew it was a good band and a famous name, and I just came and tried to play the best I could and in the way I could. Jeffrey Brand was still involved with the band, but because of his association with the London contest, he wouldn't conduct them at contests just for the initial period. In fact, I'm not really certain he was in favour of me being the next principal cornet, to be honest. I think Roy and the band were the people that pushed that through. And I can remember the first engagement was a live Radio 3 broadcast from Cheltenham in the famous music festival. Big pieces of the day. I think it was a very classical English programme, pieces like Kenilworth and Labour and Love and Severn Suite, and that was literally my baptism of fire, straight in at the deep end, so to speak. People sitting in the audience or sometimes in the same band, they don't realise the private emotion that we go through, because we're not playing for ourselves. Obviously we're wanting to be the best we can be, but there's a great pressure on, in my case, me, to be the best I can be for this famous band and not to let them down, whether it be a contest or a concert. And I can remember vivid memories at some contests, especially if the big cornet solo was later in the piece and maybe Sandy Smith played his horn solo and John Closs played his euphonium solo, and it's all going great. And you're the last soloist to play your big solo, and it's yeah, it's a pressure cooker for sure. That's what I mean. It's not about me, or it shouldn't be about any individual. We had a great strength, and it was all about one thing: the band. No individual was more important than another. No matter what we were deciding, everybody had a vote, and it was equal. So my hand going up was equal to the third cornet player's hand going up. I think everyone is under the microscope, either by sound, music making, or vision. And even when we're doing things, I'd never be seen drinking, for example, or doing things that you shouldn't do, because if you're going to preach something, you've got to lead by example, and that includes not just the music making. And it's a bit of a fable story, but the first time we went to Australia, I felt so much pressure on me as leader, and the first concert, virtually the day after we arrived, was in the fabulous Sydney Opera House. So I was literally practicing in the toilet on the jumbo jet, and it's quite a famous story now, but I would be in there for half an hour at a time, 2 or 3 times maybe or more, and I would come out, there'd be a queue halfway down the jumbo jet waiting for the loo, and I'm in there with something stuck up the bell just practicing, because there was no way on earth was I going to go onto that stage and not be what I should be for a Black Doubt band. It's not enough to have just 25 good players. They all have to complement each other, not be in love with each other and like each other, but musically be, like Harry Morton used to say, that we've all got to be singing from the same song sheet. And it just gradually fell into place, because when I came, my sound, my style was different from my predecessor, James Shepherd. So the band adapts, and I adapt, and then the conductor comes in, and then we all start moulding into a musical ensemble. And it takes time. It was, I think, nearly 2 years in my private thoughts, even although I was playing well, or I think playing well, it was nearly 2 years into the tenure that I felt, right, I am me now. Yeah, well, I come back to my mentor, Harry Mortimer. When I first came across Mr. Mortimer, it was I was just a teenager, but he took me under his wing and continued to do that even when I was playing here at Black Dyke, and he made the comment that you've just said, insofar as that relationship, musically especially, between the conductor and the principal cornet is everything. And it just clicked. It just happened because we did sing from the same song sheet. Everything Major Parts did on stage as well as in rehearsal, apart from his words asking for something, he was literally singing as he was conducting. And I was doing the same, hopefully, to the best of my ability through the instrument. No, there was no question of the demands that made on you and what you were expected to do. I mean, and to this day, people keep re-quoting me, but everything I say to students, etc., is the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary, and it's a fact. We'd all love to not have a practice one day or just have a couple of days off. I've never to this day done that. You know, I mean, for me, it will always be everything or nothing, and if I stop, I'll stop. But we had a situation where that group of players, and all the time I was here, 15, 16 years, were more or less the same players. If we had one player change in a year, that was a big change. So we all knew if I was playing something, even if it was something new, and I was going to breathe or linger to shape a phrase, people did it and waited for me without talking about it. Very rarely was there a great deal of talking. We had to become familiar with pieces, test pieces or concert pieces. But the other thing is, no one missed a rehearsal, no one missed a concert. I couldn't say, oh, I've got the chance to play a solo concert in Norway. I would have been fired. You had to be in the band and play in the band 110%. I remember one occasion, principal euphonium, before I joined the band, for probably 20 odd years, maybe more, I don't know, John Clough. And we had a concert in Worcester Cathedral. And we were leaving here at 12 o'clock, and he wasn't here, so we left. He had to drive to Worcester, and he was maybe 5 minutes late. We had to drive all the way to Worcester. It didn't matter who you were, there was one rule, and one rule for everybody. Enjoyment, yeah, but there was no backslapping. I mean, we could go to a contest or a concert and play absolutely out of our skins. But there would be, and from my point of view, there might have been the biggest cornet solo in the test piece, whether it's contest music or Sailor's Life, any of those. You don't get Derek Jackson and John Cobb patting you on the back and saying, oh, you were brilliant, Philip. They're just, that's what you're there to do. Get on with it. And it was that ethos, that mindset, expectation, and it's pointed out to you. When I joined Principal Cornet, there's always one or two of the people that were there before, and they come up and they'll tell you this is what's expected, and there's always been somebody in that jacket and on that chair better than you before you. It's like auditioning. Nobody could get into the band without the whole band giving the stamp of approval to that. You couldn't, there was no conductor say, oh, I want him on third cornet and he would be in, or him on second horn, he'd be in. Everyone was auditioned and the band decided, so there was no favoritism, you know, and there was no people coming in that might be a yes man to the conductor or whatever. The band decided who was coming in. There's too many, I think. I think one would certainly be standing up and playing solos in Sydney Opera House. Contesting, I've never been a fan of it. It's a necessary evil in the band movement. So I guess probably the first one with the major Sailor's Life, and perhaps because there was a really big musical, challenging cornet solo, and it went well. But then there's a lot of memories that come from characters in the band that are equally important. I can remember doing the proms with the band. I think one of the first time a brass band was in the proms with Elgar Howarth conducting. And when I think of all the big solos and test pieces I've had to play, and there was a choir also on the stage, and Mr. Howarth said, when we get to the piece with the choir, Philip, will you just play middle C for their pitch? And it's a typical proms audience, so middle C, D, and it's the biggest cheer in my life, I think. The audience, you know, just typical proms audience, and it's things like that stick in the memory as well. It's well, it's a treasure of memories. But I don't think now, and I didn't think then, for sure that I was a fully fledged player. I was still developing. I've only played with 2 or 3 bands properly from a boy at Kinneil. Then I developed when I was brought down as a 14-year-old to play with Yorkshire Imps. Then 2 or 3 years later, as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old principal cornet with the Fairy Band. I'm growing all the time. I'm maturing all the time. I'm learning things from people like Norman Ashcroft, Harry Mortimer. I come here. I'm 21, 22, and I'm thinking, great, everything's, but I'm still learning all the time. Even as we sit here talking now, I still don't think I'm developed. I was with Philip Smith just 2 months ago in the National Youth Brass Band and talking, and there was 2 or 3 things that we were talking about, and I thought, wow, yeah, that's a different way to approach things. So if we ever switch off and think we're there, then it's probably time to finish. But there's so many things in hindsight, you know, I mean, there was so many frustrating things at the time with major parts, in particular with test pieces. And as a player, you're sitting there and you think you can play it, and the amount of time he would spend, and I can remember vividly, whatever the test piece was, whether it was going from one section to another, the change of tempo, the change of key, it would go over and over and over those last 5, 6, 7 bars before the new key change or the new section of the piece, and overlap, back, overlap, back, overlap. And as a player, you're thinking, I want to go on and play beyond that. And then the penny drops, because when he put it all together, going from the top to the bottom, and I tried to do the same myself to the best of my ability, it's seamless. But I didn't get it at the time, and he had this magic of presenting the band's performance just as a musical picture. You never felt that there was this section, then that section, then that section. It just one picture seamlessly through. And things like that definitely have are well embedded in me. Those few bars before something, the few bars after, over and over, so it just happens. And his words were so that people don't realise it's even happened. That's a really good question, actually, because as a young player, we all want to, I've always played the melodic stuff as an encore. Every concert we did, there was the Carnival of Venices or the Chardases, and then the melody. So when Chandos, who we used to record with exclusively, major parts, myself, the band, they said, we'd like to do this series of solo CDs. And I was sort of scratching my head, because I thought, just melodies, really? Just you want to play the fancy stuff as well. But they obviously knew what they were doing. And we started the series, Volume 1, and it was just incredible. The other thing, as an instrumentalist, the fact that you had all these wonderful people being invited by Chandos to make super arrangements for you and the band. On the second one, it even included the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields String Orchestra and harpist Skylar Kanga. It was just incredible. And then the penny, again, the penny drops, because all of those things musically were finding their way more easily into Radio 2 and Radio 3 and Classic FM and all that sort of stuff. And literally they were selling thousands and thousands and thousands of CDs. And as you say, even today, 20 plus years on, there's still nice royalties coming through the post. But yeah, it was a big thing. And Chandos had that belief in what they'd already had me